The Anaheim Union High School District Board of Trustees meeting of June 4th, 2026 is called to order at 6 p.m. The following members are present: Trustee Brian O'Neill, Trustee Dr. Jose Paulo Morales, Trustee Ron Hoshi, Trustee Anne-Marie Randall Trejo, and myself. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We are going to begin with our Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence. If you may please stand for the pledge and place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So nice not having to say that so slow in elementary school.
That's true. Tonight's moment of silence, I would like to pause for a moment of silence in recognition of the recent Garden Grove incident, and grateful that no lives were harmed and that the situation was resolved safely. On behalf of the board, we're also thankful that Savannah High School and Kennedy High School were able to serve as an evacuation site, providing support and assistance to community members affected by the evacuations. Also want to extend the board's appreciation to dedicated staff members whose flexibility and hard work made it possible to reschedule the Kennedy High School graduation ceremony. Moments like these remind us that we are stronger together. In the face of unexpected challenges, our community came together with compassion, resilience, and a shared commitment to caring for one another. We are grateful to the first responders, local government agencies, school staff, families, volunteers, and community partners whose collective efforts helped protect and support those impacted. So could you please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. We will now have an opportunity for any student speakers in the audience. Seeing none, we will move on to our first presentation of the night, 5.1, Presentation and Public Hearing, Local Control and Accountability Plan. And I will defer to Amy Kwan for our speakers.
Okay, good evening, President Guerrero, members of the board, cabinet, Superintendent Dr. Freed, and AUHSD community in person and online. Each year, districts across California engage in a cycle of reflection, planning, and accountability to better understand how well we are serving students and where we need to improve through a process called the Local Control Accountability Plan. So on behalf of Ed Division, Dr. Sadhu, Mr. Saldivar, and I are pleased to present our LCAP, California School Dashboard results and school indicators for tonight's presentation. Together, these components represent not only California's accountability framework, but also the process AUHSD engages in reflecting, improving, and remaining accountable to our community, especially to our students and families. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to share both the outcomes and the continuous improvement practices that help guide our work. First, we will provide a brief overview of the LCAP, the California School Dashboard, and our local indicators, which together make up California's accountability and continuous improvement framework. Second, we'll present the required local indicators self-reflection results from AUHSD. And third, we will review the district's priorities that emerged through our educator partner engagement process and analysis of student outcomes. These priorities will help inform the development of next year for our LCAP. In many districts, these topics are presented separately, but this evening we have combined these topics together because they're very interconnected. So stay with me, everyone. This is a couple of presentations in one. Together, they tell the story of how AUHSD uses the LCAP process not only to meet accountability requirements, but also to advance our vision, mission, and core values through a cycle of continuous improvement. So before discussing the details of the accountability system, it's important to understand the purpose of LCAP. The LCAP, or Local Control Accountability Plan, is California's 3-year strategic planning and accountability framework focused on improving student outcomes. It serves as the mechanism through which districts align goals, actions, and resources to state priorities, local needs, and the voices of students, families, staff, and community members. The LCAP also encourages districts to look beyond a single measure of success. Instead, it uses multiple measures of data to monitor progress, identify opportunity and outcome gaps, and guide continuous improvement over time. At AUHSD, the LCAP helps us connect to our vision, our resources, and our daily work. It guides how we leverage our community schools approach, school redesign efforts, and targeted supports to create meaningful and equitable learning experiences for all students, particularly those furthest from opportunity. Ultimately, the LCAP is more than a compliance document. It's a roadmap for how we learn, improve, and invest in the success of every student here in AUHSD. For this reason, I want to ground our work in a reflection of one of our students. So a student had shared with us in one of our surveys, at the end of the day, we want to be taught, not worked. This statement has stayed with us because it captures an important truth about accountability and improvement and forces us to think about what is our ultimate goal as an educational institution. While metrics help inform our work, students are not data points and dashboards are not the destination. The student experience remains at the center of everything that we do. In AUHSD, we believe a whole child approach means creating the conditions where students feel a sense of belonging, engage in meaningful learning, discover purpose, and thrive. We believe education must work for students and not the other way around. That is why the LCAP is more than a reporting process for us. It's an opportunity to reflect on how well our system is creating the conditions that prepare all students for college, career, and life. Satellite data, map data, and dashboards make up the accountability portion of the LCAP. But on the improvement side of the LCAP, what drives our LCAP process is how we improve as a district is our equity transformation cycle. That's where we pair satellite and map data and those indicators with educational partner voice and street data. This practice helps us better understand student experiences and create the conditions where every student can thrive. In the equity transformation cycle, we start with deeply listening. Rather than asking what is wrong with our students, we ask, how are we doing? What can we learn about our systems? And what conditions do we need to strengthen so that students can thrive? Then together, we uncover the story behind the data. What does the results tell us? What are the root causes? What are the patterns, strengths, opportunities, and barriers across our system? From there, we reimagine what is possible by identifying priorities and considering what conditions need to be strengthened to better support students. And finally, we move. We move to align our actions, our resources, and investments to those priorities and turning what we have learned into meaningful change for our students. This year, our Community School Steering Committee and our LCAP Steering Committee combined to embark on the equity transformation cycle together. And later in this presentation, Mr. Saldivar will share the results of that journey, which include what our engagement efforts were, the themes that emerged, the priorities that surfaced that will help shape our work for next year. As we move through the equity transformation cycle, an important question is, how do we align our resources to the priorities that emerge? Part of the LCAP is determining what those expenditures are. That brings us to the Local Control Funding Formula, or LCFF. Adopted in 2013, LCFF transformed how California funds schools by replacing a complex categorical system with one grounded in equity. So every district receives what's called a per student base funding for each student. Then districts also receive supplemental grant funding for students who are low income, foster youth, or English learners whom the state collectively refers to as an unduplicated pupil. While the state uses the term English learners, AUHSD uses the term plural lingual students to recognize the linguistic assets that our students bring. But because AUHSD serves a high percentage of unduplicated pupils, we also receive what's called a concentration grant, which provides additional resources to districts with larger concentrations of students in those categorical areas. In addition to student need, the funding formula accounts for grade level differences, providing higher funding for secondary students to reflect the additional costs that go along with operating comprehensive junior high and high schools. So the goal of LCFF is simple. It's that to advance educational equity, you have to provide more resources to students that have more needs. The LCAP serves the accountability framework for these investments. It requires districts to demonstrate how supplemental and concentration grant funds are used to increase or improve services for the students who generate them. So as a result, our AUHSD LCAP goals then intentionally identify and prioritize the student groups that generate the majority of the supplemental and concentration grant funding for us, ensuring that the resources align to students' needs and will remain accountable to improving outcomes for all students, but with special attention to the students who generated our funds. So here are AUHSD's LCAP goals. Goal 1 is through a whole child approach, all students with specific attention to our district students who are low income, foster youth, and EL plurilingual will be college, career, and life ready by successfully demonstrating 21st century skills, youth voice and purpose, and technical skills. Goal 2 is through a community schools approach, co-create and provide meaningful, culturally and linguistically responsive educational opportunities for all parents and families to advocate for the assets and needs of all students, with specific attention to our district students who are low income, foster youth, and EL plurilingual. And goal 3, provide and nurture a safe, positive, and inclusive school culture that is responsive to the asset and needs of all students, with specific attention to our district students who are low income, foster youth, and EL plurilingual. Currently, AUHSD is in year 2 of our 3-year cycle, which means we have one more year with these goals to continue implementing these goals and to progress monitor how we're doing against these goals. So while tonight's presentation provides only a brief overview of the LCAP itself, it is a comprehensive planning document that's a little less than 200 pages. It's about 187 pages that details all of our goals, actions, services, expenditures, and measures of progress. The full document has been included as part of tonight's board materials and will be presented for approval at next week's board meeting and available for anyone who would like to read through that document. So these 3 goals are AUHSD's response to California's requirement that every district must establish goals that address the 8 state priorities. So while we've organized our work around our 3 local goals that reflect our vision, our mission, and community priorities, these goals collectively address all 8 state priorities and serve as the foundation of our planning, accountability, and continuous improvement efforts. The 8 state priorities are shown on this slide, and they focus around 3 broad areas: conditions of learning, student outcomes, and engagement. So now that we know what the 8 state priorities are, the next question might be, how do we know we're making progress toward them? So California uses a multiple measures approach to answer that question. There are two types of indicators. There are state indicators and local indicators. So on the graph on the left, this graph right here, it will show you what the California dashboard is made up of. The 6 indicators, the local indicators are based on a self-reflection process that districts complete and publicly report, which we will do tonight. I will do a quick overview of the 6 indicators, and Dr. Sadhu will be presenting our local indicators later in this presentation. Together, these 11 indicators help district measure their progress across all 8 state priorities. So the graphic on the right shows how each state priority is measured. The first area of conditions of learning focuses on whether students have access to the people, programs, resources, and opportunities they need to succeed. That includes the priorities of basic services, state standards, and course access. All of those are measured in the local indicators. The second area of student outcome, which examines academic performance and progress toward college, career, and life readiness, this includes the state priorities of student achievement, other student outcomes, which are measured through a combination of both state indicators and local indicators. And the third area of engagement focuses on how students, families, and educational partners experience and participate in our schools. This includes the priorities of parent engagement, student engagement, and school climate. This area is measured by a combination of both state and local indicators, including attendance, graduation, suspension, school climate, and family engagement data. So together, these measures provide a more comprehensive picture of district performance than any single metric, which used to be the California State Accountability System. So now I will move into how the state indicators get a ranking or a performance score. So for each of the 6 state indicators, districts, schools, and student groups receive one of 5 performance levels, ranging from a red to a blue. Dashboard ratings are based on 2 factors. One is status, which measures current performance, and the second is change, which measures whether the performance is improving, maintaining, or declining. In other words, the dashboard looks at where you are now and compares it to where you were before. So results are reported for districts, schools, and student groups, and that allows us to better understand how different groups and students are experiencing our system and where achievement or opportunities may exist across our system. So importantly, the dashboard is designed to help districts compare themselves to themselves. It is designed to help districts measure their own progress over time and examine outcomes through an equity lens. So it's a tool to guide our own improvement. So by looking at both performance and growth, the dashboard helps us identify strengths, areas of growth, and student groups that may require additional support. Now, there's lots of colors and lots of data here, but here the slide summarizes AUHSD's performance across the 6 state indicators over the past 2 years, along with the statewide results so that we can compare and look at context. You will also see the results disaggregated by student group. This is data that we reviewed through our community engagement process and helped us together come up with the priorities that emerged through that process, through the LCAP and the equity transformation cycle that we went through. So tonight, we're just sharing a summary of that result. So each of the 6 indicators are graduation rates, which measure the percentage of students who earn a high school diploma within 4 years, college and career readiness, which measures how well we have prepared students for success after high school, which the state measures in multiple pathways that include A through G, CTE or career technical education completion, dual enrollment, advanced placement, and other readiness indicators. And actually, recently, the State Board of Education approved the inclusion of the state seal of civic engagement to be part of this indicator. And considering that AUHSD is a leader in the state, we are very hopeful in what that might do for AUHSD improvement performance in this indicator. The next indicator is ELPI, or English Learner Progress Indicator, which measures how effectively English learners are progressing toward English proficiency. Suspension rates, which measure the percentage of students suspended at least one time during the school year and serves as an indicator of school climate and student engagement. There's chronic absenteeism that measures the percentage of students who miss 10% or more of the school days in which they're enrolled. And then academic performance measures student achievement in English language arts, mathematics, based on the state assessments. So in addition to that academic performance is science. Science is reported on the dashboard and receives a performance rating. However, it is currently provided for informational purposes only and is not included in the LCFF accountability apportionment. So together, these indicators provide a broad view of district performance, and they're purely satellite and map data to help us understand trends, monitor progress over time, and examine outcomes. However, they're very important. So I'd like to share what the priorities that have emerged for AUHSD based on these 6 state indicators. Beginning with our strengths, the data reflects continued progress in several important areas. Our graduation rates increased from 93.4% to 94.4% and continue to exceed the state average. College and career readiness improved from 49.3% to 53.2% of students meeting the state's prepared criteria, also surpassing the state's average. We also saw continued improvement in school climate as measured by suspension rates, decreasing from 4.1 to 3.0%, bringing us nearly aligned to the state average. And at the same time, the dashboard highlights several areas of growth for AUHSD. While chronic absenteeism has improved from 23.2% to 21.4%, it remains above the state average, particularly for our foster youth and students experiencing homelessness. Our mathematics achievement also remains an area of focus. Although performance improved slightly, the district remains 84.1 points below standard compared to the state average, which is 42.4 points below standard. The largest gap continues to exist for students with disabilities and our plurilingual students. And the range for how this indicator is reported is anywhere from 200 above standard or 300 below standard. So AUHSD is at 84.1 below standard. And finally, we remain focused on accelerating progress for our plurilingual students. Our English Learner Progress indicator currently stands at 40%, which is below the state average of 46.4%. And last month, we heard from our DLAC board on how our efforts are to look at our English Learner Progress indicator. So as a reminder, these indicators provide important satellite data and help us identify patterns, monitor progress, and inform our continuous improvement efforts. But it's through the equity transformation cycle where we use these results to start our inquiry as a starting point for our inquiry and not for our conclusions. They help us identify where we should listen more deeply, engage educational partners, and better understand the experiences and conditions behind that data, which again, Mr. Saldivar will help share out what that process looked like. But right now, I would like to invite Dr. Sidhu, who will now come up to present the results of our local indicators.
Good evening, Board President Guerrero, members of the board, cabinet, Superintendent Dr. Freed, and the AUHSD community. Tonight, I will present our progress on the 5 local indicators within California's accountability framework. Annually, we utilize the State Board of Education self-reflection tools to evaluate and report our ongoing progress through the California School Dashboard, as Ms. Kwan stated earlier, where districts receive a rating of either met or not met. Because these indicators evaluate system-wide infrastructures and policies, the data is analyzed at the district level rather than individual school sites or student groups. So it's important to note that. Okay, here we go. State Priority 1 addresses basic services and conditions, which covers foundational operational standards across all district campuses. This indicator monitors 3 core areas under the Williams Act legislation. The first one is ensuring teachers are appropriately credentialed, providing students with standards-aligned instructional materials, and maintaining safe and clean facilities. To ensure strict compliance, we partner with the Orange County Department of Education, which conducts annual site monitoring visits. Our district maintains a 100% compliance rate across all applicable sites, promptly resolving any minor deficiencies to ensure full alignment with our published school accountability report cards. The district has met the standard for this local indicator. Out of a workforce of more than 1,100 educators, 9 teachers were technically classified as misassigned in the 24-25 school year, a notable decrease from 24 recorded in the previous year. This minor variance is standard under the California Education Code, which permits credentialed teachers to instruct specialized electives or physical education sections outside of their primary subject area, such as a head coach leading an athletic section, for example. Furthermore, 100% of our students have full access to their own standards-aligned instructional materials, supported by our ongoing district-wide one-to-one student devices. Finally, 100% of our campus facilities successfully met the state standard for being in good repair. State Priority 2 focuses on the implementation of state academic standards. For this local measure, we utilize the state's option 2. They give us 2 options. Go with option 2, the reflection tool, to evaluate our progress on a scale from level 1, which is exploration and research, to a level 5, which is full implementation and sustainability. This comprehensive self-reflection assesses our professional learning initiatives, the delivery of instructional materials aligned to the state standards in core subjects, and also CTE, VAPA, and world languages. It also measures classroom implementation and the strengths of our support systems in helping educators identify their own ongoing professional learning needs. Okay. There we go. The district has met standard for Priority 2. Through our self-reflection, we identified strong organizational success in delivering professional learning and instructional materials aligned with our state standards and frameworks. These efforts are guided by a structured system of support that we have in AUHSD, with a deep focus on analyzing multi-tiered data related to our wildly important goals, which is our graduation, A through G completion and attendance, and community schools approach, along with our overarching LCAP goal. So they are all interconnected. Under the direction of our Curriculum Instruction and Professional Learning Director, dedicated curriculum specialists do manage content areas to directly assist teachers with classroom implementation. These specialists meet monthly with department chairs to continuously build their capacity around academic standards and instructional best practices district-wide. Here we go. While we celebrate these successes, we also have our areas for growth. They focus on systematically identifying the distinct professional learning needs of individual educators and providing targeted support for academic standards that the teachers have not fully yet mastered. Through our established professional learning system that we have, we are strategically focused on providing comprehensive training centered on the new California standards for the teaching profession. In addition, we also revamped our teacher support network to enhance professional growth. We did that in unison or in collaboration with our teachers union. The TSN provides a growth-focused, reflective, and peer-supported approach to teacher assistance for both referred and voluntary participants. State Priority 3 is parent and family engagement. Under this metric, districts annually evaluate their progress in actively seeking input from families for decision-making and promoting meaningful parental participation across all programs district-wide. To measure our performance, we utilize the state self-reflection tool, which assesses our growth in adopting promising practices in family engagement. This includes building strong relationships between school staff and families and cultivating collaborative partnerships to drive student success, establishing transparent pathways to gather input directly from district decisions. The district has met the standard in this area. Our areas of strength focus heavily on providing comprehensive resources designed to empower and support our families based on each site's unique assets and needs, and we use the assets and needs survey to assess that and to identify those needs. This school year, we have successfully utilized our family resource centers, our parent learning walks, our parent leadership academy, and our ongoing family education series. So collectively, these initiatives do build the capacity of our parents and caregivers for more meaningful leadership and decision-making, allowing us to cultivate a culturally responsive educational environment that builds directly upon the diverse assets and needs of our local community. We provide opportunities for parents and caregivers to actively participate in site and district level decision-making bodies, including our LCAP steering committee, our community school steering committee, DLAC, ELAC, SPAC, and our community school site councils. Alongside impactful initiatives like our Know Your Rights community forums and safe and secure school sessions we conducted this year, we continue to strengthen the vital partnership between our schools and our families. We do have growth areas and next steps for this priority. Those include delivering intentional professional learning regarding best practices for our communication platforms and designing structures that ensure staff can seamlessly support and engage families across our school sites. Additionally, we aim to facilitate greater access and participation with the Greater Anaheim Special Education Local Plan Area Community Advisory Committee. Try saying that 3 times fast. We are working to ensure that both staff and families are equipped with the tools and create these intentional partnerships that support student success using the dual capacity building framework. And finally, we look forward to implementing community voice circles at all school sites, serving as dedicated, welcoming spaces for families and community stakeholders to provide direct input. State Priority 6 evaluates school climate, focusing on school safety and student connectedness. Districts are required to administer a local climate survey at least every other year to obtain a valid measure of how our community perceives these areas. To satisfy this requirement, our district utilizes a narrative summary based on the administration and comprehensive analysis of our annual LCAP survey, which we administer to our school community every other year. The other one is the California Healthy Kids Survey that is given every other year. The district has met standard in this area. Our multi-year data reveals a steady annual increase in positive student survey responses regarding school climate. And I will also talk about the growth areas for this as well, but let's start with the strength. Specifically, when compared to our 23-24 baseline data, a higher percentage of students reported feeling deeply connected to their school. They do feel safe on campus and accepted for who they are. Students also increasingly affirm that they are treated with kindness in their classrooms, have a trusted adult to turn to, and genuinely care about the well-being of their peers. These quantitative improvements are validated by qualitative experiences across the district. You can clearly observe, hear, and feel these climate improvements when walking our campuses. This positive shift is heavily reinforced by student street data captured through our comprehensive LCAP surveys, our Universal Assets and Needs Assessment survey, or just survey, and our annual senior exit survey. Sorry, it's a lot of surveys. While our data reflects positive trends, our growth areas and next steps focus on a continuous effort to improve school climate through several strategic initiatives. Foremost is our ongoing professional learning surrounding pedagogies of voice, an instructional framework for co-creating classrooms centered on student voice, on student agency, and identity. This expands upon our foundational work we started with street data to foster deep engagement and a profound sense of belonging among our students, particularly for those historically marginalized learners. Alongside these efforts, we remain deeply focused on first best instruction, knowing every student by name, need, and unique story. This involves integrating the 5 C's into daily learning, expanding the Capturing Kids' Hearts training, providing professional learning on trauma-informed practices, and implementing our community schools framework to ensure students feel valued through relevant, meaningful, student-centered instruction. Finally, to ensure our physical environments mirror these welcoming classrooms, we continue to deploy site-level resources, including our partnership with Groundswell and restorative justice specialists, implementing restorative practices, collaborating with Neutral Ground, maximizing the impact of our campus safety aids, and ensuring strong mental health supports through our dedicated and cohesive team of counselors, social workers, and school psychologists. The final local indicator is State Priority 7, which ensures that all students have equitable access to and are actively enrolled in a broad course of study. The standard mandates that districts annually measure equity in course access by tracking enrollment data, identifying systemic barriers, and implementing practices that guarantee an expansive curriculum for every student. To satisfy this requirement, our district utilizes several data tracking tools. These include longitudinal reports monitoring graduation rates, A through G completion, reviews of our course catalog, detailed metrics tracking student participation in CTE pathways, world language courses, VAPA programs, and physical education offerings. Furthermore, we conduct district level transcripts and IEP audits to systematically identify, analyze, and correct gaps and trends in student placement. Our notable strengths under this priority include our 94.4% graduation rate, our 56.8% A through G completion rate, and an expansive variety of course offerings district-wide. To guide our secondary students intentionally, all students in grades 7 through 12 utilize a comprehensive 6-year academic plan hosted within our eCadence platform. This strategic framework proactively identifies each student's unique strengths, aspirations, and interests, and our efforts are directly supported by the OCDE Innovative Grant, which we received. Our identified areas of growth for Priority 7 focus on building a strategic system to increase student capacity for taking advanced A through G coursework, completing a CTE pathway, earning the state seal of biliteracy, or enrolling in a dual enrollment course. So we're continuing to focus and work on that. Moving forward, our immediate next steps involve implementing coordinated identification protocols and early intervention systems to support students facing barriers to their 6-year plans. Furthermore, we are actively leveraging the master schedule development process and utilizing flexible course scheduling to improve equitable access for all student groups. So this concludes the comprehensive overview of our district's local indicators. At this time, I would like to hand the presentation over to Mr. Robert Saldivar, Executive Director of Equity and Access, who will provide an overview of the 26-27 LCAP.
All right, thank you, Dr. Sidhu. And along with a brief overview of our 25-26 LCAP process, I will also present the priorities that our community uplifted for the 26-27 school year. Here's a quick snapshot of the various meetings we held throughout the year, beginning with our December 15th steering committee meeting, where we began planning and refining the LCAP engagement process, including identifying improvements based on input from the previous year. I will highlight some of those enhancements or improvements in our next slide. So again, based on input, we combined our district community school steering committee with our LCAP steering committee for more student, parent, caregiver, and community partner input. This took our steering committee from about 30 folks to close to 70 participants. We introduced, as Ms. Amy Kwan mentioned earlier, the street data and equity transformation cycle to the LCAP process to support deep listening and uncovering, or the deep listening and uncovering phase of the equity transformation cycle. We also streamlined and changed our format of how we visualize our data and interact with the data. This included graphs, trend data in the form of graphs, and we also used protocols like the PIN protocol to help guide the discussion or the dialogue. We also added a virtual option based on feedback and input to help increase access. For our parent prep meetings, if you recall the year before we called them debrief meetings, and based on some input, we changed the format and we moved over to parent prep meetings. That allowed us to, that allowed us to change the format and prepare our parents for the LCAP process in a different way. So instead of debriefing, we were providing strategies to build their capacity for the LCAP process. We were previewing data and reviewing how data was read, or how to read the data and interpret the data, and which entailed or provided a safe space for parents and caregivers to ask questions and to empower them to participate in our LCAP meetings. We also added a virtual option for our parent debrief meetings, which increased participation. As you all know, that's sometimes a struggle, especially in the evenings when our parents are at home, having to take care of the younger ones, and sometimes having a hard time to leave their communities because of just issues with parking and things like that. So we definitely saw an increase in participation for our prep meetings. Our LCAP steering committee process meant monthly in person before and after our LCAP meetings to ensure input and feedback was gathered. We reflected on that input and feedback after each meeting to make adjustments and improvements for our upcoming LCAP gatherings. We engage in deeply listening and uncovering. We took the input, the street data, and we used protocols like the PIM protocol to help with interpreting the data, analyzing the data, and analyzing as well. We engage in the reimagining, looking forward to what should we prioritize as the district identified priorities for each goal. Here are some pictures of some of the meetings that we had. We engaged in gallery walks. We ensured that our participants not only had access to the AI analyzed data, but also to the raw data. So we would present the data from each of the sessions, each of the working sessions. We would utilize AI to help provide summary of the data, the emerging themes, and then we provided an opportunity for our participants to walk around and look at the hard data or the raw data to ensure that the summaries were accurate and nothing was missing. Okay, so here you see some other additional pictures of folks walking around and taking a look at the raw data. We also gave them opportunities to discuss the raw data and to come back and continue to make adjustments to the AI analysis as we reach consensus on some of the emerging priorities. So now we have our emerging priorities. We have 3 goals, and for each of our goals, we had 3 emerging priorities. So that gives us a total of 9 priorities to focus on for the 26-27 school year. So for Goal 1, priority 1.2, effective instruction through community-based learning. This priority reflects our commitment to ensuring learning is both rigorous and relevant for our students. Through community-based learning and project-based learning, we are helping students apply academic learning in meaningful real-world contexts while amplifying their voice and developing the 5 Cs. By continuing to invest in teacher leaders and our 5 C coaches, we are strengthening instructional practices across classrooms so students experience learning that is engaging, relevant, and connected to voice and purpose. 1.8, equitable access for students with disabilities. This priority centers on access, inclusion, and opportunity for our students with disabilities. We continue to strengthen staff capacity through Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, and intentional lesson design so students can successfully access grade-level content and high-level coursework, including A through G opportunities. In addition, our district will continue to elevate family engagement by encouraging participation in the Greater Anaheim Special Educational Local Plan Area Community Advisory Committee. As Dr. Sidhu mentioned earlier, say that 3 times fast. Okay. To build community and access resources, our district will also expand post-secondary opportunities through Career Connections Unlimited, ensuring students who learn in unique ways are prepared for post-secondary pathways through meaningful community-based work learning experiences. 1.9, expanding AIM and work-based learning opportunities. This priority reflects our commitment to preparing students for life beyond graduation. Through AIM internships and work-based learning, students, especially closest to the margins, are connected to mentors, industry partners, and hands-on career experiences. These experiences build technical skills, build confidence, and social capital, while helping students connect their learning to future goals. Goal 2, priority 2.1, streamlining communication. Families consistently tell us that communication matters, but that clarity and timing matters just as much. This priority is about making communication more focused, consistent, and meaningful through clear updates across multiple platforms. Our goal is for every family to feel informed, connected, and able to engage in ways that directly support their student. Priority 2.2, empowering FACES to support families. Our FACES team continues to serve as a vital bridge between schools, families, and community resources. Their work goes beyond outreach. They provide personalized support and help families navigate housing, food access, student services, and academic systems and resources. This relationship-centered support helps remove barriers so students can feel stable, connected, and ready to learn. 2.4, co-creating leadership and culturally responsive engagement. This priority reflects our belief that family engagement is strongest when families are true partners and leaders in the work. Through parent ambassadors, the Parent Leadership Academy, and site-based engagement planning, we are creating leadership opportunities that reflect each school's community's strengths and needs. This work helps ensure engagement is culturally responsive, relationship-centered, and grounded in partnership. And last but not least, goal 3. We're going to start with 3.2, whole child mental health integration. Supporting student mental health remains central to our whole child approach. Across our campuses, social workers and counselors, psychologists, and school teams work together to ensure services are coordinated, accessible, and responsive. This team-based approach strengthens connection, promotes belonging, and helps students feel safe and supported. Priority 3.4, safe and effective learning environments. A safe and well-maintained learning environment is foundational to student success. This priority includes proactive supervision, maintaining clean and respectful facilities, and continuing our efforts to address student substance abuse. These actions help ensure campuses feel welcoming, safe, and ready for learning. And finally, 3.5, targeted interventions for foster youth and students facing homelessness. This priority reflects our responsibility to provide targeted support for students facing some of the greatest barriers. Through coordinated efforts by our social workers, counselors, and site teams, we are increasing access to trusted adults and strengthening individualized supports. The goal is clear. Every student feels connected, safe, supported, and positioned to succeed. So this concludes the 9 priorities that emerged from the 25-26 LCAP process. So next steps for us as a district, if we can get there. There we go. Okay. So for us as a district, we have been meeting with the leadership from different departments in our district, connecting to each of our LCAP priorities. Okay, so as an example, if you take goal 2, which is around family engagement, we've been meeting with Mr. Hernandez and his team to look at that at the 3 priorities that emerged under goal 2, and then discuss actions and next steps for the coming year to ensure that we're making progress towards meeting those priorities. Same for goal 1 and same for goal 3. So for goal 3, around facilities and safe schools, we're meeting with our M&O department, okay, with Dr. Hernandez and his team to ensure we're looking at next steps and to ensure that we're monitoring progress as we make progress for next year, towards these goals for next year. So that's what we're in the midst of that now. We've met with a few of our teams and have a few more meetings to go. With that said, we're also going to look for ways to continue to progress monitor, not just these nine priorities, but all of the goals and all of our action and services in our LCAP. So when we arrive to next year's process, 26-27, we're able to continue to provide updates, trend data, with the hopes that you're going to see a positive trend in the same priorities that emerged, including all of the other goals and action services that we need to monitor as well. Okay, going back to our equity transformation cycle, the idea is that we continue to deeply listen, we continue to reimagine or uncover and then reimagine, and the move part is what we just talked about. What are those next steps? Once we've listened deeply, once we've uncovered and we've reimagined, now it's, okay, what are we going to do next? How are we going to make progress towards these goals? How are we going to progress monitor? Okay, and the hope is that you see the fruits of our efforts throughout the year during the 26-27 school year. Ms. Amy Kwan started with a quote from a student who, and we call that street data, and it read, "At the end of the day, we want to be taught, not worked." If we set the right conditions and we are intentional with our efforts and we progress monitor our efforts, and as pointed out by Dr. Sidhu, yes, we're going to celebrate our successes, but we're going to continue to reflect on areas of growth. And if we're able to do this and do this at the highest level of our abilities, then we will hopefully run into consistent street data that is more like what we see on our final slide here. This is also from a student from our senior exit survey who reminds us that when the right conditions are set, this student tells us that the support from staff members helped me build confidence, improve communication and leadership skills, and prepare for my future goals through academic guidance and real-world experiences. So we started with one example of street data, and we're ending with a much different one where we hope to continue to aim towards and be more consistent with those kinds of experiences. Now it's time for a Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you to the three of you for the presentation and all your work with the LCAP. I will be opening up to the board for questions.
Okay.
Mr. O'Neill.
First of all, I just wanted to thank the staff, everybody that worked on this, the community and the students. It's a great report. It's different than last year. I like the goals that have been set. Question is the planning that goes into achieving those goals throughout the year, instead of waiting a full year, how are we going to know between now and 12 months from now that we're on the right path, we're achieving the goals?
The question is, how will you know, or how will we?
Well,
how will we know?
You, I'm assuming, are going to let us
Yes.
know.
We can, yeah. So
All of it.
what we're doing is obviously we're being more intentional with reviewing data and all forms of data, from satellite to map to street, not only at the district level, but at the site level as well. We've implemented things like data dives, quarterly data dives in our ed staff meetings, which we meet every Friday. We are also consistently looking at data, bringing data into the conversation to help guide our next steps and our actions, and how do we better support our sites and our different schools. So obviously for us to then report to the board, whether it's during the mid-year update or during this process or even sooner than that. But we are definitely being much more intentional with those opportunities to review and progress monitor ourselves, to hold ourselves accountable.
So we're looking at the global district, getting district results, but in order to get to district results, we have individual school results, we have individual teacher results. How are we looking at the schools, the teachers? Some are going to be, some excel, some may need some extra help along the way. How are you and your staff going to be able to determine where more help is needed along the way instead of waiting till the very end?
So thank you for that question. I think there are two distinct big changes that actually started at last year's Leadership Advance. At last year's Leadership Advance, Eric Greenwood and his team helped us create a dashboard that would give us more accessibility to our satellite and map data, broken down by school, broken down by student group, and it actually goes back about 12 years. That allows us to look at attendance, graduation, A through G, grade distribution, also broken down by a specific class and period, to help us have targeted support for our students. Another structure change that we've done is look at our opportunities in professional development in which we bring our school leadership teams together. Looking at the number of times we bring our implementation team meetings, that's about 250 people across the district coming together. It's their core SLTs and how we spend that time and backwards map from that. We used to have separate 5Cs coaches meetings, community school teacher lead meetings, and Title I meetings. We've also now combined those. And the idea of that is a coordination of our services, that the folks in the room are seeing the data to identify where the gap is. They identify the resources that we have from the district level and at the site level to allocate so that those who are helping us think about what is it that we want to do, all of that conversation's happening at the same time, and there isn't a barrier to, well, I don't know if we have enough money to do that. Well, we have our Title I person right there that can help identify and allocate those resources there. So those are two distinct structures that started last year that we are going to be able to start this upcoming year doing. We've already made adjustments to our leadership advance this year to move from what was 8 rotations to 3 rotations that will go deeper, and each rotation is longer, and it'll be unique to the school's school plan, their SPSA, their data, and their expenditures.
Amy, can you touch upon the EMT or the educational monitoring team? Because that's another significant structure that we have that I think will also address Mr. O'Neill's question.
So our EMT process, which was also launched at last year's Leadership Advance, was a coordinated effort between multiple departments to identify thresholds that we would, for students of a certain grade distribution, attendance area, or behavior outcome as measured by referrals, suspensions, or referrals to counselors or social workers. We aggregated that into a system where we can see the list of students, and once a week, EMT teams from each school will identify certain students and coordinate the resources. So we identified what threshold would we ask a teacher to intervene, would we ask a counselor to intervene, a social worker, and a wellness coach. So that level of coherence allows us to identify and make sure that every student, no student falls through the crack, but also there isn't redundancy in our services for students. So if we had one student have a case carrier and the social worker and the wellness coach and the assistant principal meeting with them, but another student didn't have any of that. So that was the purpose of our EMT process.
Okay. Thank you.
My question is very similar to Brian's. Can we go to priority 1.2, goal 1? And before I begin with the questions, first and foremost, amazing job. Great. I know this was a lot of hard work that happened throughout this semester. Specifically, first, the presentation. It was very well presented, very well, as a newest board member with my first getting a look at our LCAP, great job. And of course, all the community members who were a part of this process. My question actually going to be very similar. I mean, my questions are very similar during board meetings, right? Specifically to effective instruction through community-based learning. Now, I know for a fact, because in the short time I've been here, that we have amazing staff, amazing leadership in terms of our strengths and just the assets that we have, and not just the assets, but the heart that we have in terms of the love for the work and the community. And I'm not asking now, but it's something I will be looking at specifically in terms of community-based learning, right? And effective instruction and pedagogy. As we look at these fruits of our efforts, you're sharing that a lot of the things that we're changing, the measurements, like for example, if we are to be changing our curriculum or instruction and pedagogy, is that going to be also reflective of, under teacher evaluations? Is this EMT process culturally relevant? At Leadership Advance, are we going to look at, like, for example, in my community, among Filipino Americans or APIs, effective pedagogy and instruction for us is storytelling, right? Traditional methods of pedagogy have not worked for our communities. So I know that as we go through these processes, my specific things that I'm going to be looking for is how does communities in West Anaheim learn? How do diverse groups learn, right? I know in El Salvador, they may be learned differently than Mexico. I don't know that. I want to learn that. I want to go into classrooms and see how it's actually how pedagogy and instruction is being changed. And as we engage through these beautiful fruits of our labor, which I know our amazing faculty and staff are going to engage in, that's something I want to really look at, is how have we changed our teaching? Because some of our teaching methods have worked and are great, but definitely can be changed, which is hard for teachers. I know pedagogy, instruction, curriculum, it's hard to change the ways in which you've been trained or to learn. So I guess it's not really a question, but something that I will be looking at. But again, great job. Question number 2 goes to, comment number 2. Can we go to page 21, slide? Page 21. Goal 2, priority 2.4, co-creating leadership and culture responsive engagement. First of all, I love that. Right now I'm noticing that this is our plan, right? So I don't want people to think that I'm dinging our district. I know that this is our plan. It's a great plan, but it's not going to be easy to implement because we are so diverse. But also generationally, we're very diverse. And I love that in priority 2.4 that we are going to be co-creating leadership. We have some great leaders in our community that are very involved. I love it, right? But even in that process of co-creating leadership, that too must be culturally responsive and culturally relevant, right? I know a lot of our parents, just from going out in the communities, they're 90s babies, right? They're my age. They have kids that don't trust the system or might believe that the system in itself is the only sole responsibility for the school itself. So because of that, a lot of parents won't be engaged in schooling. Something I want to look at is how can we, bring in families who've been so disengaged in the schooling, right, process. So these are not necessarily questions, but things I'm going to be looking at. But specifically, I just wanted to share that this is amazing, right, in terms of our goals. And as we look through the fruits of our labor, I'm very proud that we're focusing on that. So that's all my comments. Sorry, Madam President.
Since he opened up that can of worms, I did want to ask in that question about the school climate and that we met, but how do you guys define community-based learning and also trauma-informed practices? Those are 2 areas that we're saying we're talking about the professional learning and building capacity of staff. So I just wanted to see if we could give that to the general public to what that looks like.
On the first question, I'll invite our executive director, Carlos Saldivar, to come and talk about Carlos Hernandez. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. Apologize. Whoa.
Best of both worlds.
Apologies.
That's okay.
He will talk about how we're defining community-based learning.
There we go. Yeah, good evening. Thanks, everybody, for the question. I'm excited. I know you said comment, but I really wanted to share the connections and the coherence and what's happening. This idea of redesigning, the experiences for our students. Specifically, there are some structural, opportunities for redesigning family engagement. When we say redesigning family engagement through co-creation, we're talking about shared responsibility. And we're doing this, helping our students grow together. And so how do we invite our families in? Ball Junior High right now is thinking about ways to create experiences that parent conferences, when we look at family engagement assessment, parent conferences happen so well at the elementary level. In some districts at the secondary level, we haven't been able to figure that out. until I think now. We're looking at instructional minutes and we're saying, what can we do during the time to include parent conferences during the school day so that we don't have to do this after school that we typically want to do. So things like that where we're co-creating and where parent conferences are happening, redesigning is part of that experience. To go to the community-based learning, the community-based learning is, there's 8 practices that we, Anaheim Union, are saying this is the meat and potatoes and the heart of the work, community-based learning, and we're going to start with a sequence of events. We start our school year with creating a culture, a welcoming conditions for our students. That's the first community-based learning. That's relationship-centered. That's what's happening in the classroom and outside of the classroom. Not only for our students, for our families. The second is, do our students feel belonging, the identity and agency? That's the second community-based learning experiences that we want our students to have. And the third and fourth, and as we move towards creating that community, it's the community connectiveness. It's the place-based experiences. And our teachers are thriving in terms of sharing and learning from each other. Our colloquium just last week, we had 100 teachers have amazing experiences, 4 full days, and now they are on fire at every one of our schools. They're sharing. Our community school teacher leads, our instructional leaders are on community-based learning. Our 5 Cs are helping with pedagogy. So that's excitement because our leadership advance. I know you asked about what's happening at leadership advance. That's how we're starting. One of 3 workshops. One of them is community-based learning. Every one of our sites, leadership teams will experience as counselors and FACEs and community school coordinators and instructional leaders and principals, and I hope all of you to see what community-based learning is and how does it impact me as that role to support the students and the families outside and inside of the classroom. So exciting times because this is happening all simultaneously, and then ultimately the authentic assessment. How do we know it's working? We're asking our students. The universal assets and needs that we're talking about, we're pushing the system to say we only ask those questions one time at the beginning of the year. Well, why not look at a pre-set of data and then a post at the end of the year? And in between, ask those same questions of our students 3 or 4 times. Our schools are doing that. Our Anaheim High School, Magnolia, they're asking our students, do you feel belonging this month? Is it growing compared to next month? Do you see do you feel an agency? Do you see yourself in the content? We're seeing that over time and we're growing. And when it's not, we're addressing that with our sites in a compassionate way. How do we improve this? Because it's not improving right now. And so all of these things are.
I've been to some trainings and I've also heard how you guys, when you're speaking to the teachers, you also include student voice. And I think that a huge part of this too. I also did you have another question?
Yeah, just because I don't want us to keep going and I'm just curious about, because I heard this before I was on the board, that we were doing this, but in Leadership Advance, or I guess my question is we're doing community-based pedagogy, teaching, learning, professional development within Leadership Advance, and I'm sure within other areas, but are we going into the community? And when I say community, not just the neighborhoods, the socioeconomically advantaged, but are we going into the hood? Mm-hmm. Pretty much. Do we know the struggles that are the multiple layers that are affecting our kids from learning? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. That is the hope, and that is what we want to do more of. Home visits, we call them hopes and dreams, because we ask our families in wherever their neighborhoods are, how do you see yourself supporting our students? How can we support you? I mean, starting there, but also continuing the work around getting into neighborhoods. So I'm going to say yes, and we want to hope that continues because there's pockets of that happening.
And I'm not calling my community the hood. That's just kind of like the Ebonics term for our, you know what I'm saying? Know that I'm from the hood. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think Ron.
The trauma-informed practices. That was the other part of my question.
And then evaluations. That's part of the evaluations. Just to finish on that is our teacher evaluations. It is exciting because it is now embedded. 1.C and 2.D are all talking about family engagement, co-creation, family engagement, inclusive environments, and inviting our families in. Is not dessert. It is the meat and potatoes of the way we see our teachers doing their job. But that's part of that.
I'm just going to answer a little bit of that. You would even say this year, the recent years at open houses, they're truly open. It's not a going into the classroom situation. It's a celebration, and the teachers are out there in their departments, and they're creating ways that to engage with our parents. They'll make a fun game to play. So it's easy. It's a way to come up and approach the teachers. It's an easier way to do that. And I just want to say that's another example of how we're using a community approach, I believe. Because it can be daunting, I think, to go into a classroom and have to ask those questions. And so that's a way I feel that we're changing in the district.
To answer our trauma-informed practices strategy, we're doing and launching in Leadership Advance, and what we've been working toward doing is building out our framework for our big system, but also building out our ability to measure and progress monitor how we're doing against that framework. So our strategy for trauma-informed practices is really our MTSS or PBIS strategy. We have our last school that is trained in capturing kids' hearts, but really what our system to help us monitor is going to be our mental health wellness task force that has a combination of our counselors, our social workers, our school psychologists to identify areas of need and match our framework to where our areas of need are. And so we are hopeful with our new director of mental health and wellness leading that team that we have opportunities to bridge that gap from those who are providing the tier 2 and tier 3 services to supporting our tier 1 practices, which start in the classroom.
I just wanted to clarify, so these findings were from 24-25, from the survey and so forth, and we said that we had 17,620 student responses to the survey. I mean, that's in this report.
No, the baseline data came from 24-25. The
Yes.
results that were shared today were 25-26 results.
25-26, okay, and that was 17,620 students that participated in the LCAP survey. Okay, out of approximately 24,000 students?
Correct.
Okay. You know what, when I'm looking at these numbers, I look at, I see all the percentages, but I want to know how we're moving the needle in some of these areas. For instance, how many, when we're talking about low-income students, but I know the vast majority of our students, you know, they are in that category, but I'm looking more at the foster youth and the EL students. How many students are we talking about? And do we have breakdowns of that by site too as well and things?
We do. Part of the engagement process, we actually have a dashboard that helps us identify the survey results of the LCAP, broken down by school, broken down by student groups if they're of a significant category. Statistically significant, not that they're insignificant. Foster youth typically will not show up on that dashboard because there's so few of them that they would be identified by their answers. But our process in supporting our foster youth is having a specified case carrier, if you will, someone assigned to every single foster youth student in AUHSD. And that person is actually our social workers.
But that's the reason why, because I think the numbers are kind of, you know, when you see highs and lows by percentages, I want to know kind of like probably going too much in the weeds, but I mean, I want to know specifics more like the number of students and how we're, because a lot of this stuff, and I applaud you guys for this, it talks about knowing kids by name and need and being intentional. And by doing that, by being intentional, we can really help those students if we're really targeting and being intentional about it. So Yeah, I'd like to know that. Also, in one of the areas of growth, you guys talked about identifying the professional learning needs of individual teachers. And I thought that was really good. And I mean, but it's like, how would we facilitate, what would be the plan to really build the capacity of teachers and so forth in areas that, because I mean, education's changing in the way we relate to kids and how we connect to kids. And, the 5 C's, the incorporation of the 5 C's and, project-based learning, all this stuff. I'm glad that you identified that as an area of growth, and that I'm really encouraged to see how we're gonna to do that.
Actually, this year it's part of the negotiated contract with ASTA is that we survey all of our teachers and actually all ASTA unit members on what they would like to see in our professional learning strategy. So we actually surveyed all of our teachers and helped use that data to build out next year's professional learning calendar. And our strategy for next year is actually a blank calendar because it should be localized to the school site. So we're bringing that data back to the SLTs for the SLTs to determine what their professional learning calendar should look like based on the interests of the staff, but also based on the needs of the students as identified through their SPSA data, through our street data, through our community of practice. And so we're asking sites to look at those results of their student groups and then determine their professional learning calendar from that.
Perfect. Mr. Hernandez, I have a question for you. You talked about the combination of the LCAP and Community Schools Steering Committee, and you went from 30 participants to 70. And I just wanted to make sure, do we have representatives from all sites on that? And are we looking to build that? Because when was that formed or implemented?
Is Mr. Saldivar or that Mr. Saldivar?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Hernandez. Is that Mr. Saldivar?
That's Saldivar.
Which, okay.
Mr. Saldivar question.
Oh, is that a Mr. Saldivar
Good,
question?
good.
I'm Mr.
Okay,
Saldivar.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hernandez.
Yeah.
I know.
We combined the LCAP steering committee, which already had student, parent representatives, site representatives, and district representatives, and then we brought along our community school steering committee, and we invited all of those folks, which had additional site representatives, additional parents and students, and additional community representatives as well. So we have obviously a very diverse group of representatives. Now, I think your question was, is every single site represented? No, not every single site is represented because again, it's really it's a sampling of across the district. We have folks from different communities, but not necessarily from every site. Does that make sense?
Yes. Now, also too, are you guys combining that with school site council too? Is that part of it?
That's
so it's going to be LCAP steering committee and community schools.
So two different facets of our organization. So, but at the school site, they are combining their school site council with their community schools site team. But that's not a steering committee. But they are combining at the school site.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. And I do want to thank you guys for including Kennedy, Walker, Cypress, Lexington, and Oxford. And I think that they went to the community schools conference that you guys had. So thank you for that. You guys talked about implementing community voice circles at all sites. I think the biggest issue to get greater is staggering times, or do you guys survey the parents and things and have we found what is the best times to do these community voice circles?
Yeah.
I think they're valuable.
Yeah, our faces do that as a system at the beginning of each year. actually at the end. So we ask those questions of our families as we're starting the year. What's the best time in terms of services to make sure? So is it cafecito in the morning, or is it cafecito in the evening? Is it community voice circles? Both, or do we need to do both? So every site depends on their responses. They tailor the services to the site's responses. That's part of their initial survey at the beginning of the year during registration.
I'm going to offer a suggestion, and that is, when I go to schools and I see like Lunch with a Lion, I mean, there's so many parents that show up, and I'm thinking, man, would that be an opportunity? Is that a missed opportunity when those parents are already there to hey, can you be with us for 30 minutes and stay? And because we don't want to serve kids a cold lunch before. So afterwards, could they stay for 30 minutes, and can we have discussion? And I think when we combine things that when parents are already there might be helpful, and we might get a whole different group of parents that don't come to the coffee with the principals.
To your point, that's exactly what Ball is doing on the Lunch with a Loved One. They start with that, and then they continue with parent conferences afterwards. They're already on campus. Let's continue to share, and doing that with 7th graders on those days, and then other days with 8th graders, depending on the quarter.
I want to thank you guys all, each and every one of you, for this presentation. I really love this whole this equity transformation cycle, and I think the big thing the takeaway for me is the question that we as a district can always be asking ourselves, and it's like, what can we do better? And one of my friends said, better is better. And so when we focus on that, and mine is Kaizen, I'm looking for a 1%, and if we do that incrementally every day, then we are just gonna get better and better. So you guys, this report, was so jam-packed with information, but it was presented so thoroughly, and I thank you so much for your work.
All right, thank you so much for this presentation. I am extremely pleased with the climate survey. My comments are wow. Every single indicator was improved, and that's exactly, if students don't feel comfortable, being here, or safe, then they won't learn. So I'm really, really pleased, because last time it was a bummer to read those numbers, and I knew we could do it. I knew we could raise them. And thanks to this committee, thanks to everybody out there, we did it together as a group. I want to compliment all of you, because I know you don't rest on your laurels, and I know when you present stuff like this to us, you're not happy to see from last year. You're not happy, and you don't rest. And I know you lay awake at night going, ugh, I want to do better. And I really appreciate that you're showing us how you're doing it better. You're not just saying, oh, we're thinking about doing something. You've given us examples. You, on the spot, you could sit there and say, Ball's doing this. This school is doing this. And I love that. You're giving examples that are concrete, and they are being raised. The percentages are being raised, more than 1%. So bravo.
Board Clerk, may I ask a follow-up question to something in relation to the school climate?
Yes.
I want to know, since I'm the newest one, how did we, and I think this is probably one of the most important things, we now have 83.6% of students who report that they have at least one adult that they can go to ask for help. We raised that by 14.6%. Bravo. How did we do that?
I think the answer to that might be unique to
The sites.
the individual school sites, but one, I think our community of practice that we've done as a district to district-wide guide our sites to listen deeply to our students, to uncover that in and of itself.
Could it also be some of the organizations that we've partnered with, such as Groundswell, some of the organizations that are in our community already? I'm just theorizing.
It could be that. I attribute it to the community of practice
Okay.
and that going to a structural change. Our first community of practice actually started with Gilbert High School. And in their community of practice where they identified a group of students and went through a process to deeply listen and shadow those students, the structural change that Gilbert made from that process was to have a one-to-one student identify with a teacher on that campus. Some of our other sites, so that's kind of like our redesign process. Many of our other sites are moving to an advisory model on their campuses, and that dedication and commitment of instructional minutes that are meant to be invested in the relationship building and in the student, we believe that that's some of the structural changes that are coming out of our community of practice.
May I add to that? I think when you go back to the idea of community-based learning and you start with relationship-centered classes and being intentional with that, and you talked about the power of stories, and so when you start to collect the street data and you put that in front of staff, and you hear things from their own students, like at the end of the day, we want to be taught and not worked, right? That should inspire and that should, encourage and motivate staff to be more intentional with getting to know their students by name, need, and story, right? And so when you start to put that framework in front of them, the community-based learning framework, and you start with relationship-centered classes,
Yes.
and you start to make those connections to the street data. If we do this well, what kind of street data are we going to be seeing down the road? So along with what Ms. Kwan just said, I think it's also the intention behind what's happening in the classroom every day, where 85% of the students' day is spent in the classroom. So
Nice.
just starting with that.
And I'd add it's probably the students too, right? Because for students, it doesn't matter. I don't know what you know unless I know that you care, right? And to be vulnerable, right? It's important for educators and adults that they could be vulnerable as well. So yes, nice.
I'm also hoping some of our structures, such as EMT or referrals, help us find early indicators where we might see where a student might be disengaged, and then assigning one of our resources or adults to reach out to the student is helping that process. I think last year when Neutral Ground actually presented, we heard the parent and the student say they found me. And that's when that's an indicator for us to know that we're doing it right, that we find the student as opposed to leaving it up to the student to have to find the resource.
And also, I think that in what helps students feel connected is that we're looking at different ways to measure their progress. One student may not do well on a test, but may be able to do a project. And can you talk a little bit about those indicators and what we've been doing? Or maybe you want to do that, you lean forward.
Ms. Kwan.
Can you repeat the question?
The question is to talk a little bit more on how we are monitoring our students and grading differently so that we can see get the best out of our students.
I think that starts with our process of data dives, just looking at the data in general and asking our staff to think about, does this outcome, which is a grade, actually match what a student is performing and doing in the classroom? Looking at that in attendance. How can a student who is in our classes more than 90% of the time still not be able to pass that class if they're a captive audience in the class? Having those conversations and trusting our teachers and their expertise. They are already changing some of their minutes that they're using to adjust to that. Our curriculum specialists and our instructional drivers around our capstone process, our PTAs, the guiding principles of how to develop a PTA. While our ask is each teacher have 2 PTAs a year, we know they're doing more, but it's also now we're evolving in that concept in our professional learning, and it's what's happening every day, every period, and that's going to be part of our community-based learning framework that we've co-developed with our teachers and all the learning that we've been getting through our community school teacher leads.
For
But
those
that
who do
focus-
not know what a PTA, not the usual PTA as we know it, can you elaborate on what that is?
So AUHSD, we call our larger project-based learning that might be more typical outside of AUHSD. Our project-based learning, we call them performance task assessments in AUHSD, not to be confused with what the state test has as PTA's performance task assessments, which is bigger than a multiple choice, but it's still a one-time opportunity to complete a task. Our performance task assessments are robust and usually last much more than a day.
And I love the fact that you're talking about giving teachers some more support. Can you talk a little bit more about that, the teacher support network, what that
So-
looks like?
The Teacher Support Network was actually co-created with our union to help support our teachers who either self-identify or are identified through the evaluation process as needing more support. And in AUHSD, we have so many opportunities to pair those teachers with so many teacher leaders who are practicing teachers and teacher coaches in our district, that is our opportunity to do so. Dr. Freed, do you have more to add to
and
that?
the other thing that's important to know with the Teacher Support Network is that was not just done through negotiations, but it was done collaboratively with not just Ed Services and the teacher union, but also with HR, because it is part of the evaluation process. A teacher can opt in to get that support should they want that, but it can also be something that's part of the evaluation process. So if a teacher is struggling, it's another anchor of support for a teacher to uplift their practice in doing this. And remember, this upcoming year is the first year with the new California Standards for Teaching Professions that I think Mr. Hernandez referenced, and that's very much aligned to the work that we've been doing. It's very much aligned to mental models and implicit bias and things of nature that I think we have struggled because when you look at the contract and the teaching standards, it wasn't necessarily called out in the previous CSTPs, but in the new framework that starts this current year, they're called out. So now when we do the evaluations, and to ASTA's credit, the union's credit, they have been working with us where this past year, our curriculum specialists, as all professional learning they've been engaging in with our teachers, we have been explicitly connecting it to the new framework. So we've been training them all this past school year in prepping for the new framework. And we'll continue to do that even into this upcoming school year. So that's what I like about it. It was really a collaborative process with not just Ed Services and the union, but also with HR and the evaluation process as well.
All right, when great minds come together. I love that. My last question is kind of like a Pollyanna question. In a perfect world, what indicators would you guys like to see on the dashboard besides the ones that we have?
Well, we're very excited about the new
Seal,
change in the seal of civic
Yeah,
engagement.
that's a big thing.
We would love to see one that is tied to students demonstrating something like a project-based learning, a performance task assessment. We tend to like the indicators that require the whole system of education to support the students. So what I mean by that, there's a couple college and career indicators that deem a student prepared by a one-time test or a one-time thing done. That is great, but the California School Dashboard is meant to be an indicator of the system, not the student. So when a student is able to show preparedness in one shot, that's not as informative to the system when we think about our improvement practices. How much were we involved in doing that? And so seeing something like a capstone project, AP exams that allow students to submit their own artifacts of learning is something that we would love to see on the college and career indicator.
Yeah, and one of the things I would echo is actually Ms. Kwan and I have an opportunity, and we have a team going up in September to San Jose. We are doing a keynote on at a conference that's focused on the graduate profile, which is our capstone, but it's a student learner profile. And Dr. Darlene Hammond, who's the State Board of Education president, but also the executive director of the Learning Policy Institute, which is a big player in our school redesign efforts that we've been engaged in the last few years. In my ideal world, I would like to see schools and districts be given more cover and maybe under the local indicator, because I recognize it's different than what we currently see on the dashboard, but moving more towards that graduate profile or that capstone program, because you all have been to capstones, and we have, where you can have a student who maybe struggled, life happened to that student, and at the end of their capstone they're talking about a journey. When you look at their transcript, it may not be a student who under the traditional system would celebrate or affirm them, right? They would be looked at as someone who didn't do very well, and they would be that throwaway, right? That the systems back in the day would label. And when you hear and listen to their stories and their journey and their challenge, they still come out confident, and they're talking about that all of my grades are not A's and B's, they were C's and D's, and I dealt with a divorce, or I dealt with whatever life threw their way. You see them come out at the end, and there's this confidence, there's the skills that we integrate into our classrooms. You see the amplification of their voice and purpose, and there's this confidence that despite the challenges that I face, and I may not be super proud of my transcript, I know that I'm going to be okay. And you can't put a price tag on that. Like at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our students leave us with options and prepared to handle whatever life throws their way. And for us, I think the graduate profile and the capstone and the work that our teachers and our staff, all staff, right, have been a part of, really create the conditions for again, that whole child community-centered approach. And so for me, if there was a perfect dashboard, it would include under local indicators an expectation of a graduate profile. So we can really focus on that. Because I think as educators, we're humans, right? And by nature, we're going to teach based on how we're assessed. And so for us, I'm grateful that our district has chosen to measure what we value, as opposed to most districts who just value what can be measured, right? Even with our AI, right? And the way that we're now beginning to assess through AI the 5 C's based on the reflections our students upload into our eCadence platform. And so now we're able to tease out how our students are progressing with that skill development over the course of their time with us. And teachers can now use that data to then inform their instructional practices. So if I'm not seeing a lot of creativity opportunities coming out of my student reflections, I can go back to my PTA or performance task assessment and do more intentional work to integrate that opportunity so we can build that creativity skill or muscle in our students. So for me, that's what I'm really proud of. And the graduate profile gives us the cover to really focus on that whole child approach, as opposed to where most districts are preparing kids to do well on one test that we know does not prepare them for the world of work, does not prepare them for life, doesn't even get them into college, right? It's just an indicator on the system. And again, not to say we take that seriously, but that whole child approach, I think, is where the answers are in really preparing our kids for life beyond school.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a question on the college and career indicators. I know we have exceeded the state average in the past 2 years, which is amazing. So thank you so much for that work. But I know the priorities for Goal 1, in particular Priority 1.8 and Priority 1.9, is to look at it more in a way to close the gap, especially for, I know it referenced our students furthest from opportunity. Do we have an idea of what those type of supports or like potential partnerships that we're looking for to build that gap for our students that are ELs, students with disabilities, to have the college and career readiness?
I think the structural answer to that might be how the types of courses that we offer and which courses are accessible to our students. So in AUHSD, we have an approach and a philosophy around integration. So something like the ethnic studies requirement, that's integrated into a class so that students don't have to take an additional course for things. So dual enrollment being integrated into the school year, dual enrollment counting for a couple of things. So when our special ed students and sometimes our ELD students in a more traditional model where the courses are siloed, it might put some of those students in a disadvantage because they'll need more classes to complete more requirements. But in our approach where we integrate more things, that will give our students, especially those furthest from opportunity, an opportunity to take the classes that they need, but also have that satisfy multiple requirements. So that students can really focus on having choice in the courses that they take. Sometimes in some institutions, they may say, you can't take that elective, you can't take this other thing because you have to take this required course. But the more that we can integrate the required course with the interest-based opportunity, then we believe we're going to close the gap on some of those areas. 2 years ago, our students asked for flexible scheduling. We expanded our summer school options, our e-learning options. Those are ways that will also help students take the classes that that are required and take classes that they're interested in to meet some of those requirements.
And then can you share a little bit what the Career Connections Unlimited is?
I can share a little bit. That is specific and unique to our Special Youth Services Department. It's a partnership to support our adult transition students in being able to have work-based learning experiences. There are many partners that are part of that work. We actually have a team in AUHSD led by Tina Carpenter that helps make those connections, and I believe we have the most robust grant in the state of California for us to be able to give our adult transition students work-based learning opportunities.
And I know we're trying to expand that.
Yes.
Well, we just had a breakfast and we celebrated that program and all the work that we're doing with our business partners. And it's increasing like 200-fold next year, so it's really good. And we acknowledged all the people who are supporting our students, and the students are getting paid as well.
Yes. And then
Part of our OCD Innovation Grant is actually around helping our students identify their strengths, interests, and aspirations and matching it with their career pathways. $125,000 of that $525,000 is going to Hope School.
That's awesome. And then I wanted to share with Priority 1.9, expanding AIM and work-based learning opportunities. I know, I think it might have been last year, I know I met a student who completed her AIM internship, I believe it's at Disneyland Resort, as an English language learner. So I was interested if there's more opportunities for that to grow those career opportunities for our English language learners.
As long as we continue to grow our partnerships, anyone who is willing to continue to donate to our efforts in the AIM program, we're always open to doing that. Our strategy for expanding our AIM opportunities for certain student groups is the power of the invite. So do we have systems where we can identify students, specifically targeting students who are not typically represented in our AIM programs, asking our teachers, our counselors, our folks to refer students. And it's also the nature of our partnerships that we're creating that is naturally attracting the assets that some of our students have. So having some partnerships of our students, our translators for some of our partnerships. We had a City of Anaheim internship opening up our school pantries at all of our schools. We specifically targeted students who were bilingual English learners, newcomers, because their experiences help us do that work better. So they strengthen our strategy to reach out to the community better.
Right, just add to that. So as I mentioned earlier, we've been meeting with some of our teams to figure out the next steps for each of these priorities. So we did meet with Scott Randall and his team, and one of the strategies that he had mentioned is he's obviously going to be more intentional with working with the AIM coordinators at each of the sites to work with the counselors and teachers to identify our plurilingual students and encourage them to apply for these opportunities. And obviously track the data, right? And look at that trend data to ensure that we are increasing those numbers for our plurilingual students and really any student that's closest to the margins. So that is a part of that the move part in the equity transformation cycle. What are our next steps? Here is what our community has given us as our priorities. Now, what are we going to do? And so now we are sitting with each of those teams that are tied to each of those priorities to identify next steps.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then I just want to say on behalf of the board, really appreciate everyone's work on the LCAP this year, especially the additions that we've had, opening the access to families, including providing childcare, transportation, translations, and now a virtual option this year. So thank you so much for your proactive work in making sure our families are engaged throughout the process. Thank you. And now I will open the public hearing for the local control and accountability plan. Seeing no public speakers, I will close the public hearing and we will move on to 5.2, presentation and public hearing on the 2026-2027 proposed budget plan, and I will defer to Dr. Nguyen.
Thank you so much. I'm waiting for the presentation to come on. Perfect. Thank you so much. Oh, so do we need to click on that? Okay. Well, good evening, Board President Guerrero, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Free, members of the public, and those watching online. Well, tonight I'm bringing you some welcoming news for the first time in a long time. So I'm very, very excited to bring this presentation to you tonight. The May revised projected significant personal income growth fueled by capital gains in the current year and some modest growth in the budget year. So we're seeing some numbers that are really positive at the state level. This would then eliminate the projected ongoing deficit while providing budget stability for the state budget as well as for the district's budget at this point. The one key thing I do want to point out for the 25-26, so this is not the next year's budget, but the 25-26 budget, is that the way we're funded is through LCFF, and that's part of Part 28. We are continuing to get a quote-unquote deferrals, right? This is something that the state would owe us. Initially, back at in January, it was projected from $5.6 billion that was going to be deferred, and now the number's down to $3.9 billion at the state level. This translates into about $15.2 million for our district. So when we're closing our books for 25-26, we are going to basically accrue the amount, meaning that we're going to say we're going to get the revenue, but at this point, we do not know when it's coming. It could be coming, if the revenue estimate materialize or exceed expectations, the May revised indicate that these funds will be distributed in the 2027 Budget Act or across multiple budget years, right? Sometimes they'll do what happened, they'll give you some in one year and then some in the other year. But think about this. We're owed the $15 million. If we were just based on the current interest rate of 4.6%, we also lose the revenue from the interest of about $700,000 annually. So the state is owing us this money, right? So if they don't pay us next year, which they say they're probably not going to pay us next year, it get pushed out to one more year, or it could be pushed out to a couple years down the road. So this is something that we want to continue to lobby, that this gets eliminated from the budget, that pay us in current year in 25-26 and don't push out our revenue in the out years. So it's something I do wanted to, overall the budget is good, but the state, please address this problem of Prop 98, right? You owe us the money, please give us that money. So this is something that we want to fight for. So instead of creating new initiatives, the governor's proposing a significant one-time discretionary fund that will prepare education for raining day. And so this is the Student Support and Professional Development Discretionary Block Grant. This is a one-time funding that we are expected to receive in the new fiscal year in the amount of $21.2 million. Remember this number we presented second interim was much lower. And now the May revised came. It is now the updated number is $21.2 million for our district. So this money can be used for professional development, dual enrollment, career pathway, and teacher recruitment / retention. And we have 4 years to spend this money. It goes through until June 30th, 2030. So this will provide us with a soft landing, right? Because back in, and I'm gonna share the numbers, but this is a big support to our district and as well as the districts throughout the state. So very excited about this. And regarding to special education, the governor now is providing an historic increase that surpasses the statewide equalized funding rate that was proposed back in January. We are now projected to receive $9.3 million of ongoing dollars into our AB 602. That's how we're funded for special education. And this is ongoing. So the rate that's going to be raised to $13.40 per funded ADA. This is historic. I've been a CBO almost now 20 years. We're so excited that the state is finally recognizing that we need more money for special education. And this is ongoing. And so we're extremely excited about this, okay? So we have so far been really good news, right? This is very welcoming news, and I want to make sure that I say that. The state, though, is proposing from the governor the paid pregnancy disability leave. Now, this is it's something new, but there is no money to pay for it. They're saying, well, we're giving you the additional money, right? So feel free to pay for that using your local control funding formula and our base dollars. To be eligible, this applies to all regular, certificated, and classified public school employees with no minimum hours worked or length service required. So anytime you come in, so that's a new. The reasons for it will be pregnancy, childbirth, miscarriage, termination, or recovery. The benefit duration will be full pay for up to a maximum of 14 weeks. 14 weeks. Currently, it's only 6 weeks. So this is something that, and I'm gonna give you a number because we did some estimation. Thank you to Joe. We did some of the numbers. Okay. This will run consecutively with state and federal leaves, and it's not deducted from the accrual pay leave. So we are currently estimating that this would cost approximately, right? Because we have some data that we did some research on, and so based on a 3-year averaging, we're looking at it could possibly cost about maybe $500,000 a year. And now it's just depending on how many births that year and different things, but this is something that we are extremely concerned about. This will be a new cost. Now, we did not budget for this mandate at this point because it has not happened yet. But if it does happen, we would then have to recalculate to see what that number would be. But our projection is about $500,000 a year ongoing if this were to happen. Okay. Now, I want to review some of the key indicators for our district. And this is a little different chart, but something I wanted to share. These are enrollment projections, right? So where we were at in 2023 and what we projected to 2930. And so as you will see here, our projection continued to show that we are still in declining enrollment. And I know the board, you guys have done a lot of work, and as well as a community, as well as a group, to resolve this declining enrollment issue. And but unfortunately, the trend continues. Right, the decline is a little bit less than what it was before, but I'm going to show you that in the next chart. And but it's one thing on the enrollment. We're funded on the ADA, average daily attendance, and that's the rate that the orange bar you see there. We're still at 92%, and we haven't recovered yet from prior to COVID, which was about 95%, which is unheard of. But that means students is probably missing about, on average, 18 days of school a year. Right, of 180 instructional days, on average, each child, on average. Now, we saw the chronic absenteeism. Some of those kids are missing a lot more, and some of the kids we have seen perfect attendance. But the average students that we're looking at, they're missing about 18 days of school, right? So this is something we are very concerned about. We want to address, and I know we continue to work on that as well. And so something that we want to be aware of. And then next one is the unduplicated pupil count. So as you have seen, the numbers have going down a little bit. And right now the numbers we're using, we went from about 78% on the average to now about to 76%. And so this is something that it will affect our funding as well if we continue to go down in the unduplicated as well. And this is our annual decline, enrollment decline. And you can see here, a projected decline for next year in 26-27 is projected to go down to about 861 students. Okay, in the next 4 years, we're looking at an average decline of about 732 students. So the next 4 years total, we're looking at to decline by about 2,900 students in the next 4 years, right? And if you look back in the past 5 years, from 2021 to 2025, we lost about 4,000 students, and that's an average of about 800 students, right, in that time, in each year. But total, we lost 4,000 students. And so I know something that is not a shock, but I think it's very important to see what the trend, and we are projecting that we are going to continue to decline. Regarding the pension, so the STIRS and PERS district contribution. So if you're looking at CalSTRS, we coming from 18-19 to what we're currently projected for 26-27. We increased from about $24.7 million to about $38 million. So that's about 1.5 times more, right? And so that is continuing the trend. With regard to CalPERS, their investment haven't done as well. So back in 2018-19, it's about $10 million. For next year, we're projected that we will be spending, the district side, about $25 million. Okay, so that's about 2.5 times more than what we were spending not even 10 years ago. Now, the CalPERS new rates are coming out, so it looks like they are stabilizing, and they seem to be going down a little bit in the out years, and I'll be showing that to you in some of the budget assumptions as well. And this is our health and welfare, the actuals, how much we spend, and what our projections are. And based on projections, we are going up about 10% a year. That's how we put it in. And I do want to thank everyone who's on the Health Benefits Committee, including our 2 board members. The committee has worked a lot to make sure that we're providing the best care for our employees. But overall, the healthcare industry, the cost is going up. Mm-hmm. And this is also impacting not the healthcare part, but our workman's comp, because all the medical care costs is going up. Our workers' comp rate is actually going up next year by about 12% or so. Mm. Okay, so that's also in our budget that we'll be including. So there's some additional expenses that we are projecting as well. I'll now go through our multi-year projection to kind of share some of the assumptions of what we put into this budget. So the good news is in 26-27, we have our base COLA went up from second interim. We're now at 2.87. And then you're hearing this super COLA, right, of additional 1.44%. This bring up our COLA for next year, just on the LCFF side, to 4.31%. Okay, with this additional is bringing us additional dollars to our base already. So very, very excited about that. That's additional money coming through. You can see the out years, the COLA, it's going up to about 3.3%, and then 3.09 and 3.11. So those numbers are a little bit higher than what we projected back in second interim. So that's really good news. And you can see the CalPERS rate here. So I was talking about that. The rate's going from 26.4, going up a little bit to 26.8% in 27-28, and then it's going down to 25.9% in 28-29, and then to 25.1% in 29-10. So in 29-30, we have not had rates going down. It's been going up. And so we're hoping with better investments, this rate will be continuing to decline. As you can see here, our workman's comp rate, it went from 2.325% in 25-26 year. It's going up to about 2.6%, and that's our current projections. Now, the overall revenue in 26-27, combining the unrestricted and the restricted, is about $567.8 million. And as you can see, bulk of our revenue is coming from LCFF, about 72% from the state. So when we get the super COLA, that really helps us with our revenue in this case. And then the Total expenditures in 26-27, this is combining unrestricted and restricted with, as well as with the transfer out, is at $558.6 million. So if we take a look at that, this is our combined general fund, combining the unrestricted side and then the restricted side. So if you look at here, as a result of the additional resources, the additional dollars we're getting in, at the end of fiscal year 26-27, that's our proposed adopted budget, we will have a $2.7 million positive balance in that fiscal year. Right. Remember, back in second interim, we projected a $43 million deficit. So you can ask Nancy, it's only been 3 months. What changed? We're getting the additional COLA increase of about $4.4 million for 26-27. Special ed, AB 602 is going up by about $9.3 million. And we also have the one-time discretionary dollars of the $21.2 million. So that helped us with this budget. So we're very grateful to the governor, and we hope that this get passed, and even better, addressing the Prop 98 short fund for 25-26. So that's for the 26-27. But without any changes, our expenditure will now exceed our revenues in 27-28, starting 27-28, with a $31.7 million deficit. Now, initially, we were supposed to be deficit spending by quite a bit this year already, but because of all the state revenue, now that got pushed into next fiscal year. And then the trend continues to $41.3 million and $53.6 million in 29-30. And we want to focus on the unrestricted side of the budget, because this is where there's no restrictions with all this money coming through. So on this side, you can see here, our expenditure will exceed our unrestricted revenues by about $2.7 million starting in 26-27. So on the unrestricted side, right, because we are getting some of the one-time dollars that's going to be help with all these stuff, but on the unrestricted side by itself, we are starting to deficit spending in 26-27, $2.7 million, and then it will increase to about $19.8 million, then $43 million, and then $55 million. And so this is something that we will have to address, but we do have some time now, given that we are getting the projected additional dollars from the state. And this is on the restricted side. So given that we are projected to receive that additional $21.2 million in the one-time discretionary fund, and the ongoing of $9.3 million in AB 602. So the special ed funding goes into the restricted side, not on the unrestricted side, okay? So wanted to make sure that that's why in 26-27, we're actually having a positive fund balance in the 26-27 on the restricted side as well, because we're getting these one-time dollars coming through. Imagine if we didn't have the additional one-time and not the massive increase in the special ed funding as well. And we do have the commitment, so because of the state budget level, we have to have some from the funds we are committing. The categories for the 26-27, what we're proposing is to set aside benefits for classified summer assistance program, so $483,000, and we have now about a little bit. We don't have as much involvement. We do continue to have staff in it. However, the matching at the state level now is a lot less. I think it was about 46 cents to $1. Correct, Joe? That's about, I think, the latest one that we're getting. Now, remember, not that many years ago, they were almost getting a dollar for dollar match. But now more districts are on board, so it is still a great benefit for employees who are eligible for this. So we're happy for them, but they were gotten a lot more of that. So this is our district's share of what we have to pay in the statutory benefits. We also have the bus leasing that we're setting aside, textbook adoption, so that's coming. Then the board also have the additional 3% reserve. We also have the pension investment, and then the restricted program contribution. This is a new category we're putting here. This is basically to set aside dollars that we would have to make a contribution into the special education as well as routine restricted maintenance. So that's under Clinton's direction. Their budget is about 3% of the total expenditure. That's how they get their funding to support the district for that. And then the last one is the fiscal stabilization fund, $118 million. So this is the category where we're dealing with declining enrollment. We're setting aside dollars in because of deficit spending. We're setting aside dollars to offset the future years as well. Regarding the timelines, tonight we're bringing the proposed budget for your review and public comments. And then on June 11th, the board will take formal action to adopt the LCAP first and then the district's annual budget as well at that point. And by mid-June, the state legislature must pass the budget by midnight on June 15th and followed by the governor's signature. So once we get those information, then the district has 45 days to bring any adjustment to the board based on the finalized state numbers. So it has been a very positive news. I am so excited because only 3 months ago we were talking about deficit spending. We have to be addressing, there are a lot of things we were working on to make sure that we address that. And now it's 3 months later, we have some welcoming news for our community. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm now happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much for the presentation and for your team's work in
Thank you.
preparing
And I
it.
do want to shout out to Karen Orr. It's been 2 straight weekends and nights every night that we are working on the budget. So thank you so much, Karen, for all your hard work. You are a warrior, and I really appreciate all your work on this.
Thank you. And I will open the questions to the board.
I have no
Trustee
questions, just thank you to you and your staff for a great report. And we look forward to the good funding that you are projecting at the moment. Hope it continues.
O'Neill.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much to you and your team as well. Just a quick question for paid pregnancy disability leave. What do we currently have?
So it's about 6 weeks. That's when we check with HR and working with them to get those numbers last time. It's about 6 weeks. And so this would be something a little different. It doesn't even get deducted. So
Yeah, 3.5
so
months.
yeah, it's an additional liability, and if it does pass the way it is, then we would have to budget that at the 45-day update as an expenditure.
And then my next question, we students on average miss about 18 days. Do we know on when? Typically, when do they miss days? Fridays. I remember when I was a teacher and we moved Thanksgiving break, or fall break, and eliminated those days because we knew people ditched, right? Do we have that data?
So we can do some analysis. So we've been talking about this, and one of the things that we did was during the budget committee that was brought up was, and I think Trustee O'Neill, you were there, was possibly shifting, the winter break a little bit because, Anaheim Elementary has a 3-week break and we only have a 2-week break. And when we look at that data set, there was a huge drop for our district. And so we hope that will come back some of the percentage. But we started off really high at 95%. That's really unheard of for a secondary district. So, but even if we can get up to 1% or even 2%, I think that will be very ideal. So hopefully because it is an extra week.
Yes,
So
I would
that's
like
something
that data.
Right.
If we don't have it, I'm really curious about the 3-week.
We have those data. We did some analysis
Okay.
already for some time already, and we did share that with the budget committee. And that is
Okay.
something that I know that we will have to work with. I'm going to have to work with our HR, Mr. Jackson, on that, and then he would have to negotiate on that. So because there could be other impacts if that were to happen. So.
Yeah, you just said it, Nancy. So it's a negotiated item with our union. So Brad has already been looking into it. We've already reached out to our feeders. And so obviously, because it's negotiated, we cannot survey teachers and classify. They have to survey their own members in this case because it's negotiated. But once we get that feedback, then he can begin working with them to identify this is something that our community wants to do. We would likely also want to do focus groups with our families and whatnot to get their
Yeah,
input. Just
definitely.
going back to our
And
community
know
school
that our
question.
families do want it. When I was at Anaheim Elementary and we had a block system where 2 of our schools literally had like year-round schooling. And when we moved from one calendar, when it came to the data in terms of attendance, it went up significantly. So I'm just assuming that, but I would like the raw data.
Yeah, we have ran those numbers because this is one of the things that we want to address, and that will be helpful to come back that number. And because that week still counts prior to the P2, which is by April 15th. So that will be critical to help us to increase our attendance rate.
You know, so piggybacking off of that too, because you guys just mentioned Anaheim Elementary, but we have 4 other school districts as well. And I'm trying to think that there are some people that, you know, I mean, sometimes the older siblings have to take care.
And that's
So
what
if those schedules aren't aligned, and if we could do a better job, and I know that we're working on our relationships with the other school districts, and I think that is a huge topic of discussion.
And I believe the only one when we checked last time was Magnolia School District. They're also on the 2 weeks like us. So, so I think it's not just aligning with their calendar, is also the start date too, because that would also matter. And so there are, you know, like Cypress is off by like a day. I don't know. Some of the districts are off by a couple of days. And so that would also have to play in a factor, right? If we're all aligned somehow.
Right, because some of the holidays don't even align.
Exactly.
And so it's like, yeah, if an older sibling, which is typically in high school, has to watch an elementary school student, I mean, we have kids in we have families in multiple school districts, so I'm looking forward to that alignment with. You know, I also wanted to find out too, how intentional are we being, or are we recovering any funds from our Saturday academies?
So we do run the report as well. And so, Karen, Joe, do you guys have that data? Or we can also get that information and bring back. So I know that so when they make up those days, then we will run those attendance again just to recover those times. So they would miss a school, but then they make it up, and then we have our initial data that we collect for each month. And then once they do complete the Saturday Academy, then they put in the updated attendance. Then we're able to go ahead and just recover that piece of it. So we've been doing that.
So Nancy, I have a question. So does the Saturday Academy take care of one day then? I mean, or is it still in their record as 18 days missed?
Well, it would be like if they go to an academy, they will make up whatever time that they miss. So it's not, I would assume it's a day for a day.
Do we just get the funding for it?
No,
I think we just get the funding for it, but I think in our dashboard, it's still 18 days. It doesn't take away the day.
Oh, got it. But yeah, for funding's different than that,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
okay.
Is that the question?
But we recover the funding for a day for if they go to 4 hours of Saturday school?
Yeah, and we also, and I know that SSF push, you know, one of the initiative is if you miss days of school, you can do independent study, and people need to request for that as well. And so try not to miss school, but you can also do independent study, and then we can, some of the kids miss, a few days, and they do request for that, and then we will get those credits. So because everything is now online, right? So they're able to access all their work, courts, through Cadence as well. So there are different ways to do it. It just whether the student and the parents, inform the staff in advance so that they can get everything ready for them when they go.
I'm glad to hear that because I know that some students, because we start in August, they're still on vacation. And so they can do independent study. They can apply for that.
Yeah, so we built in a system where, I'll use an example, and I know you said we started earlier, but some families work in the world of business where they get their 2 weeks of vacation and it doesn't necessarily align with our schedule. Right. Mm-hmm. So a student may say to their teacher, I'm going to be out next week because I'm going on a vacation with my family to X, right? And so if they give us a notice, we can have them do the paperwork for what's called short-term independent study. Mm-hmm. And we get up to, I think, 15 days of short-term independent study where a student can do that. Because we have eCadence, they can access their work. As long as when they come back, they have a short period of time to return in the work that they missed while they were out through that short-term independent study contract. And then they get the credit for being there. We don't lose the ADA because it was an independent study contract that they had for the 4 days or 5 days they were out. But again, it's up to 15 days. So as long as we know ahead of time, we can have them complete that contract and they can get the short-term independent study credit. But if they do it after the fact, then we're not supposed to do that.
Okay, so that would show in like an absence then?
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be covered as, it would be labeled as probably like, I don't know if it's I or whatever the independent study acronym is, like T is truant. There's something for that. I just don't remember what it is. But it would be in our system so that we would get credit for their attendance because they're on independent study for those days that they're labeled out. And when they turn the work in, then it verifies it and we get the attendance credit.
I have a question related to attendance, just because I'm new. I don't know how we start our year. I remember Anaheim Elementary, we had to start SMART program or something I even remember my nephew Finn, like, I don't know when I start school. Do we have some type of reminder, some type of kickoff event to remind our students, hey, the first day of school is actually this week? I'm curious.
Yeah, so our schools, they 2 weeks before school begins, they're doing a lot of their registration process. So they're already connecting families. Many of our schools have family or parent nights where they're kind of reinforcing the rules and expectations and setting the groundwork for the start of the school year. But it's also it's a welcoming, and then a lot of messaging goes out from both the sites and the district as a welcoming back to the school year with reminders. They're getting that both via social media, via Parent Square. They're getting, like, I'll do my monthly video. We'll cover that in the opening of the school before it starts. So there's a number of ways that we communicate with our families and our students so they know. And it's also in the registration materials that they submit. So when they're turning their paperwork in and doing their registration process, there's a ton of reminders through that process in terms of when the first day of school is. Yeah.
Oh, and as a parent of 2 students that attend our district, we get a lot of reminders. We probably get 5 texts every day, probably 5 emails every day. So you know when school's starting. Like, you know way in advance. So you can check I can send a text every time I get one.
Remember, as a secondary district too, a lot of our students are already back. All of our athletic programs that are in the fall, they're already competing. Like, they're already starting this week. So there's a ton of reminders, and it's very commonplace to know that this is when school begins.
Is there a certain time of day when the ADA is recorded? That we get credit for the
So if
student?
they attend any portions of the day, we'll get credit for that, any portion of the day. So that's what we tell them. You're just going to go to a doctor's appointment. Just go for the appointment and come back. Just come back. Even for one period, please, just come back. Yes.
I don't have any questions, but just a comment. Aunt Nancy, I love that you're happy. I love that you got to add instead of subtract. However, this isn't news to Jessica and I. We knew that the governor was doing this flim-flam, we call it, messing with the budget money. And then, yes, oh, great, we're going to give the 14 weeks, but then we're going to take our Prop 98 funding. So just know that the associations, everybody has been complaining about this, because if we set a precedence, if the governor gets to set a precedence with our Prop 98 funding now, then who knows what the next person will think that they can do. But this is promised. 98 is promised to us, and we all know it's under budget to run school districts, but we are fighting.
Thank you.
And
I know
this does not happen.
Yeah. And I think both of you, you and our board president serve on the delegate. And so thank you for advocating for us. And we really, really need them to not defer the Prop $98 and don't add any more mandate that you don't give us money for.
Correct.
We don't have, yes, we're getting money. But there are, of course, I'm very optimistic today, but in case something else happens, right? Like, there's different times in my career, something was very good, and then 6 months later, this disaster happened, then something happened. So, there are risks for sure. but I think overall it's a much more positive than what we presented back 3 months ago. And I'll try to be very hopeful like Dr. Freed. Dr. Freed's always hopeful that we, with additional money, it hopefully will help us absorb some of the things in the event that we don't get the money sooner than later, because our concern is we're going to accrue the money and we don't get it. And so we will have to write it off somewhere, right? And so that's our concern. And that's a possibility, right? Because right now they're saying, we don't know, maybe 2027, maybe even out years. So, well, if you owe us $15 million with interest, I just calculated interest too, that's a lot of money you're owing us. And so I don't think that's right. And the state does that all the time because they don't book that money until it goes out. Well, we book the money even though it's not coming in at this point. And so that's the dilemma we're running into. Dr. Free.
And to board member trustee Randall Trejo's point, just so you know, and I think it's important for the public to know that not only the advocacy that you have been doing as a part of being on the delegate, but even board president Jessica Guerrero and I and Jeff Morgenstern with ASTA, we met with Senator Umberg's team and Senator Umberg himself to advocate. And then we recently met with Assembly member Avelino Valencia, also a former graduate of our district, right, to advocate as well. So we're also trying to do things on our end to individually reach out to people who have influence at the state legislature to make impact. So, and then to Nancy's point, we have talked about as a cabinet that we're trying to do everything we can to tighten the belt whenever there's opportunities now, so we're not waiting and just kicking the can. So even when there's a retirement or a resignation, we're asking to pause before we replace to make sure it's needed. So we're really trying to, wherever we can, absorb, we want to. So things are happening. We're also revisiting all the contracts and service providers and consulting agreements we've had over the years and what's really needed versus what can we reduce or minimize. So those are all things that we're looking at right now and being proactive to get ahead of this in the coming years.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation
thank
and proactiveness in preparing us for the future.
Thank you.
Yes, I will now move on to the public comment portion. So I'm going to open the public hearing for the 2026-2027 proposed budget. And I do have 2 public comment slips. The first public comment will be Jermaine Newman.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jermaine Newman, parent community member here in Anaheim. I want to thank everybody for this presentation, but I do have some concerns about it, especially following our commitment to transparency and accountability. I just want to point out that this presentation is not the full budget, it's just a summary of the budget, which we appreciate because the budget is long and lengthy and very hard to read, but the documents were not available ahead of time. They're not available on our website. They're not available. And even the documents that are handed out here for the public are illegible. So I just want to call on you to make sure that somebody's checking these documents before they print, 50 copies, and make sure that us as a community have full access to it. It's hard to have a comments about in a public hearing on the budget when you can't actually access the information. The last time your website has been updated with the budget presentation was 3 years ago, so it's greatly lacking. So last time was in 2023. I appreciate if you would make it available for us as public. Same thing applies to the LCAP presentation. Nice summary, but I really want to know where those funds are going to be used, what school sites, especially since we have things such as great disparities in our school sites. Back in 2024, you voted to approve new board policy 91-300 on parent and family engagement, and included in that was a commitment to educate our families, our community, about how to read the SARC, the school accountability reports, which actually gives a breakdown of English learners per school site and how they're doing in math, how they're doing in reading. All of this information is available on the SARCs. And it would be great if we actually educated our community on that so they could access that information, especially before the LCAP presentation process. One example would be the math scores at Anaheim High School. We are at 11.94% of our graduating seniors that met the state standard for math. As it applies to girls at Anaheim High School, it's 6.8%. So that is 24 girls out of 670 students who graduated this 2 weeks ago. I think that's unacceptable. I think it's really important that we put the resources to the school sites that need them and apply it to our English learners who are at like less than 1%. So please help us out. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker will be Bianca Garcia.
Evening board, educators, and community members. During the LCAP presentation, we saw our district's chronic absenteeism is higher than the state average. So in addition to the declining enrollment, we have a lot of students who do not attend our schools. When I heard the projected cost for the paid pregnancy disability leave, which is about $500,000 a year, I want to advocate to not fear this. We are community schools. This kind of an act would allow us to retain employees. I meet regularly with our district employees, and I have found they hesitate to send their own children to our schools. I meet regularly with city officials, and most don't send their children to our schools. We've seen a trend of only doing one-year contracts for teachers. This disturbs our students' experience. And as a constituent, district alum, and human, I ask the board, as you review the proposed budget, remember we are community schools, and our community has needs, basic human needs, and they come with costs, and that is okay. As a community, we have the abilities and the talent to find funds and resources to continue. Thank you.
I will now close the public hearing for the proposed budget and move on to our general public comment section. And our first speaker will be Matzo.
Kwalitotaki. Buenas tardes, good afternoon. Itokan Masa Tepeyalotzin. I just want to kind of give you a history lesson. I think it's important about the word colonists at Anaheim High School. Indigenous Peoples Day offers a reminder of Native American history, including the scalping they endured in hands of colonists. B. White settlers, white youth scalping against indigenous peoples, and for less acknowledged and understood, in fact, colonists' use of scalping against Native American peoples likely altered this practice. C. Colonist territories and states, is what is now known the U.S., used scalp bounties widely from 17th through 19th century, still to this day. D. Massachusetts made the wide use of scalp bounties among New England colonies, like the Anaheim colony. When we talk about the Anaheim PD killing our Chicanos and Chicanas, that's for you, Rosie and Peril. E. For every scalp of such female Indian or male Indian under the age of 12 years that shall be killed and brought in as evidence of their being killed, 20 pounds, and declaration reads. The reward was a large amount of money of colonists, equivalent to more than 5,000 pounds, or 12,000 in today's currency. The scalp of male Native Americans could fetch 2.5 times this amount. F. And the violence was non-standing. As several historians point out, violence against scalping of Native Americans also played a significant role in the conquest of California in 1846. G. From a contemporary perspective, the United Nations would consider the targeted killing of indigenous women and children to this day, and it's still genocide. I have 1 minute left. Is that? Oh. So basically, this is this was written by psychologists, and I hear a lot about like having counselors, psychologists, you know, it's very important, but I also encourage you all, like we met them and you saw it at Magnolia High School. I'm very happy that we were all there and we got to see, witness, feel, experience a small powwow, traditional bird songs, you know, with the rattles, because the drums were never really played here. The drums are more like California, Oregon. That's native to that territory, hand drums, panguewits or wewits. But here is the clappers. And I hope that you guys really take that in consideration, and that our brothers that work at Anaheim High School really reach out to Sacred Path, to you too. I think it's very important because they provide a lot of services. Neutral ground is good. You know, they're Chicanos, but I think we need to go deeper, and it's a start. But I know we're going to make that change, and it's very important. Thank you so much. Gracias.
Our next speaker is Ginger Cruz.
I'm here for the same thing I was here last time, and I'm going to be here every time, even if we're last, like always. Everything everybody had to say was very important because I'm also a mother and a grandmother of Anaheim School District. My grandkids go to Walker now and Kennedy, and that's where my kids attended. And I live in Buena Park. I'm also in ELAC and DLAC. And I just want to say how offensive it is, how many years we've been coming here asking you guys, maybe not the same faces and the same people like I told you last time, but how offensive it is to have the name colonists in Anaheim High School. Same thing like the Indians in Fullerton. And for the people that don't understand what we're referring to, then do your homework, because you know what? This is stolen land here. And I'm an indigenous woman of Orange County for 59 years, and my family 80. And my city of Buena Park has only existed, they say that we celebrate 73. So I'm just here to say, please take into consideration how offensive the name colonist is to us Native American women, children, and our ancestors that are here in this room today. And that's why, you know, I kind of lose patience because we're always last, you know. But I know everybody had to say everything important stuff, so that's all. I'm done. But you'll be seeing us keep coming until we all come in agreement on that. Same thing if it was your people, you would stand together. Maybe it's just a few of us here tonight, but we're here for our ancestors also. So thank you for your time. Have a blessed night.
Next speaker is Christina Eriks.
Hi, good evening. I'm here as an educator, a counselor here in Orange County. I would like to express my support as well to enact, there's an Assembly Bill 3074, the California Racial Mascot Act. I know that the first deadline of implementation is July 1st, 2026, with the exception to extend due to financial and logistical circumstances to 2028. I know that Anaheim has a history of racial tensions stemming from the early 1920s. Anaheim has definitely changed in the past 100 years. Anaheim has beauty in its cultural diversity. It's time that we make a commitment and close a dark part in our history with sustainable action. Our students need to have images displayed that reflect and promote their identity, remove harmful representations to their self-concept. Changing mascots that are offensive to our Native Indigenous communities is long overdue and is the right step forward. I ask that this change is not delayed and that you provide the public a realistic timeline for implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We will now move on to superintendent and staff reports. Dr. Freed.
No report tonight.
Ms. Kwan.
I just want to briefly acknowledge and thank all of our members who attended the National Family and Community Engagement Conference. Last week, we had over 70 participants coming just from AUHSD, but over 4,000 participants from all across the United States. And on the main stage featured was our very own Superintendent Freed, our very own Executive Director, Carlos Hernandez. We also had a friend of AUHSD and parent in our district, Maritza Bermudez, and a student from AUHSD, Frida Sanchez, and many friends of AUHSD who are really featured as part of the National Family and Community Engagement, and just being with a beautiful community across the United States that we can lead and learn with. That's my report for tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson, Dr. Nian.
No report tonight.
Mr. Waddell? No. Okay. Moving on to our items of business for tonight. We have 8.1, resolution number 2025, order of biannual trustee election and specifications of the election order.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. Trustee O'Neill?
Aye.
Trustee McCullis?
Aye.
Trustee Hoshi? Trustee Randall Trejo?
Aye.
And I vote aye. It's 5-0. 8.2, memorandum of understanding with CSCA, increased hours, 5.75 hour instructional assistance.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I firmly support this. You know, I've gone to a lot of sites and spoken to some of our IAs, and, you know, it didn't make sense that some of them would leave early, you know, and they wouldn't be in the classroom all day. And, you know, it did affect some of the students that they worked with. So to have them there the entire time until the kids leave is so important. So, yeah, I fully support this.
Yes, echoing those comments. So the workday will increase from 5.75 hours per day to 6.0 hours per day. Seeing no other comments, all in favor?
Aye.
It's 5-0.
Thank you for doing this.
Yes, thank you to our team for doing this. Number 9, advanced planning. Our next meeting will be next Thursday, June 11th, 2026, right here at 6 p.m. Do I have any suggested agenda items? Seeing none, do I have a motion for
Move to
adjournment?
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 8:34 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for being here.